All right. Now, one of the conversations we have a lot in customer success is about customer sentiment or CSM sentiment, or how the customer success manager rates the relationship with the customer, and how fuzzy and squishy of a thing it is, and how hard it is to quantify, how hard it is to measure. And so it's something you can't actually put any weight to, and you can't actually use it for any of your actual metrics. But what if you could? What if you had a concrete measurement of CSM sentiment that was consistent, trainable, repeatable, and actually gave you actionable information about each individual customer? And when I sat down to do this, this was pretty funny. This is a continuation of a conversation I had earlier where I believe the thumbnail is QBRs are dead and sentiment doesn't matter, from two different influencers on LinkedIn who talked about how CSM sentiment was basically worthless. And I don't think so. And that's one of those things where, being a customer success manager advocate, being a customer success manager myself, CSM sentiment is hugely important in understanding the relationship with a customer. Outside of renewal, outside of upsells, you could have a customer that is just miserable, hates everything about it, but keeps buying it because they don't have any other options. And that is something that your usual hard metrics won't see, but your CSM sentiment will. So it's one of those really important things to keep in mind. And truth be told, anybody who's been doing this for any length of time already has an actual metric and something that's in their head all the time when they think about how to rate a customer's sentiment. So what I've done here is I've gone ahead and broken this down into an actionable piece. So here's some of the challenges related to it. Excuse me, we'll start here. So challenges, it's hard to train on. It's not consistent CSM to CSM. So two people could rate the same customer completely different customer success manager sentiment, even if it's the same customer, same conversations, same information. It's hard to track because it's very rarely is there an actual metric you can say, this is a sentiment of 2. What does that mean? What is a 2? What makes a 2? What is the actual metric you put into that? It can be misleading because, again, because it varies so much person to person, and even next point, varies customer by customer, that it is really hard to actually make broad judgments about customers who have the same CSM sentiment score. And that also makes it unreliable. These are all different points along this that all basically say the same thing. It's hard to use, it's inconsistent, it is difficult to rate because you don't know what it means. So how do we solve this? So if you're anything like me, you already have a rubric. You put your customer relationships in categories. You prioritize based on what you already know are strengths and weaknesses of that relationship and where it needs to improve. So you've already done it. You've already done this. It's already in your head. The matter is just putting it on paper, putting it in a rubric, and making sure you have a system. So I've gone ahead, and these slides are not my best. I'll try to improve those. But on a 1 to 10 scale, 5 categories. Each point is from 0 to 2. So number 1 is communication. Are you talking to them? Number 2 is authority. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to the right people? Number 3 is their usage or adoption of the product. Are leads and staff using the tools? So you've got just your product usage categories. Number 4, feedback. Do they have feedback? Is it good feedback? Is it bad feedback? Is it both? And number 5 is advocacy, your top score that'll push people from your 8 to your 10s. And I've broken this down because all of these are easily measurable. All of these have numbers that you could put to these. You can easily score this, and these are all things that are part of what goes into your customer success sentiment. If you are not talking to them at all, you don't know. If you're talking to the wrong people, you don't know. If they're not using the product, you don't know. These are all, you can only correctly gauge and measure a CSM sentiment if you have at least most of these categories on some level filled out. So number 1, communication. If you're not having regular two-way conversations with a client, there is no CSM sentiment. You don't know. I have my 0 score here is no contact. You have not or do not speak to them. No known lead. You keep trying to figure out who you're supposed to be talking to. Little to no response to outreach. So you've tried a bunch, you're not hearing anything back. Everybody's very familiar with that class of customer. They're out there. A 1, so the middle score in the communication category is 1 lead. Lead will usually reply if you reach out, but not always. And the lead reaches out, but not always to you. Support, old contacts, etc. So they'll reach out to support, say, hey, I don't know who my CSM is, but, or they'll call the office, or they'll call the support line instead of replying to your emails, for example. That's your 1. It's okay. It's passable. Like, you have spotty communication, but there is communication. And of course, these are not to dial back all the advantages of this, but these are a little bit fluid, right? I hope that these broad number categories help sort of understand what each one is and is supposed to mean. And so in communication, your 2 is going to be if you have multiple leads. Leads will always reply if you reach out, and the leads reach out directly to you. That's your goal. That is a healthy level of communication. That by itself is a 2 on the 10 scale of customer success sentiment. Number 2, authority. The best conversations in the world don't, matter if they're not connected to decision making, product use, or both. So a 0 in this category is leads have no contact with purchasers or evaluators. Say you're working with front desk staff, not the CEO of the company. Lead doesn't use the product. That's one that comes up surprisingly often, where the person put in charge of the relationship with the vendor isn't the end user. And I really kind of dig into these folks to try to be like, hey, can I talk to end users? Can we get some feedback? Can you have them answer this like short host of questions? Like, I want to get you understanding where they are and helping me understand where they are as well. Last one there is lead routinely doesn't know the answers to your questions because they're not the end user. They're not talking to the end users. They don't know. These are problems. So these are all going to be a 0 in your authority. So you could have a really good communication, but still be at a 2 out of 4 because of your, challenges here because you're not talking to the right people. A 1 is the lead is in touch with leadership. Lead will usually be able to answer your questions, whether they be leadership related or end user related. Lead personally uses the product or works directly with people who do. They have that actual understanding. They have that live conversation. Anytime you bring up something product related, they can keep up. That's your 1. Number 2, leads are the decision makers. If you work directly with the CEO, there you go. Leads are heavily involved in product setup and use, also very helpful. If they're the people that implemented the product and were the most heavily trained in the beginning, that's helpful too. Leads have detailed information on the customer's behavior and needs, not just the product itself or the staff using it have that, but then also have the actual strategic goals behind the purchase in the first place, why they're using this platform, why they picked it up in the first place, what they want to use it for in the future. That's really good. So there's your 2 on authority, your top score on authority. Number 3, usage and adoption. Who pays for a car they can't drive? I made this a little while ago and haven't actually addressed it, so it's kind of fun looking back in my captions here. So number 3 for usage adoption, a 0 is the product was never set up. Product isn't used. Customer needs to be reminded they even have it. And that's a little bit fuzzy because that could be if they have 3 products and they're using one of them and 2 of them aren't being used. That still, to me, is a 0 because they have stuff they're not using, but they are paying for it. And that's going to come back somehow. Either they're going to want a refund for what they paid for, or they're going to be upset at the total cost, or they're going to churn just because they don't use it and they don't know what they don't know. A 1 in the usage adoption is product was mostly set up. Implementation may have been closed early, but it's mostly done. Product sees some use, got you in your yellow score here. And then your product setup included some level of staff training, not just your admins, not just your key contacts, but some trainees beyond your core group that you're already talking to all the time. That helps kind of give you a little bit more spread into the relationship with that company. So even if your lead contact goes away, you'll have users who are familiar and can advocate for the product in a perfect world. Number 2 in this category, leads are active users of the product. Setup was thorough and complete, so you get all the boxes ticked. Customer is trained, has training plans, and is deeply familiar with the product. Also there, if you have folks on staff who are actively training internal staff members as well, so they have their own training materials they use and update consistently, excellent. Love to see that. That's great. In doing this process, I was just in my head rehashing my 2 scores, my customers that have 2 in any or all of these categories. And it's always really satisfying to compare a 0 to a 2 and be like, love a good 2. And for the most part, your 0s are just, they're not necessarily bad, but it's that category of sentiment where you don't have enough information to actually rank it. So it doesn't get a 1 or a 2 just because of a lack of information, usually. Number 4, this is our 4th of 5 categories, feedback. Who pays for a car? I didn't change that. Who pays for a car they can't drive? Same thing. Lead has no feedback. That's never good. You want feedback, whether it's good or bad. You want some. Customer has no feedback. So even the lead, if they're somewhat tangentially related to other users, they're also not bringing in feedback from them. This is a case where if there's a big bug or a product outage or something that everyone is talking about, and that handful of customers aren't at all, that's suspicious. And that's my 0 category in your feedback. Feedback given shows a misunderstanding or misuse of the product. They tell you their computer cup holder is broken. We all know that joke. A 1 in feedback. Feedback is all positive, or feedback is all negative. The all positive tells you that they are maybe not looking at it in the depth that you would like. They're just for lack of a better word, a blind advocate. Feedback is all negative indicates a negative sentiment where they just don't like you or it. Feedback is often through support, NPS surveys, rather than through your conversations. If you're having wonderful conversations and then the NPS scores come in negative, the Net Promoter Score surveys, you either want to talk to the people who are giving those ratings if they're different, or you want to kind of dig into that. You want to confront that head on and be like, hey, look, we have great conversations, but I know that you've been giving this feedback. Let's talk about that. There's your ones. And I personally rate very highly negative feedback. Even if the feedback is all negative all the time, that is feedback and almost always comes from a space of that customer really caring about this stuff working the way it's supposed to. I like that. I like negative feedback. It's not, the most feels good, but it's very helpful. A 2 in your feedback category is leads give detailed feedback and frequently. They, especially if it's unprompted, they come to you saying, hey, I was thinking about this, or hey, I was using this, and that's really good. That means they're experimenting, iterating, thinking about this stuff on a high level and sharing with you. That's a really good sign of a healthy relationship. Feedback is constructive, good or bad. If they say, hey, this feature sucks, I would like it to do this, instead of just this sucks. Customer shows knowledge of the product and how it works. Feedback relates to future use, not just how they're using it now, but if they say, hey, this is what we want to see, this is what we look forward to using, this is what we'd like to go to next. That's really good. That implies a continued long-term relationship with you that they want to continue developing because they trust you, they trust the product, they trust the company. That's a really good one. It's one of the best points on this entire scale. Number 5, advocacy, our top 5. And this again is the category where on your 10 scale, if somebody can be a 0 to a 2 in any one of the 5 categories, your 5th category is going to be the one that's going to push people from an 8 to a 10. So even your healthiest average customer or your above average healthy customer is still probably going to be an 8 because they may not be advocates necessarily. They may tick all of the other boxes or have a 1 in some categories here or there. But this is the one where you're looking for your best of the best. The best of the best. Do they go out of their way to strengthen the relationship, talk up the product, and get the very best out of their work with you? I really wanted to highlight that last piece of that because the thing about advocacy, it is very rewarding for a customer. And this is for you customers out there. If you're an advocate, if you're constantly reaching out, if you have lively, productive conversations where you're like pushing the boundaries of the conversation you're already having with your customer's success manager, that's really good for everyone involved. The CSM learns more, the company learns more, you as a user and a customer learn more, and everybody along the way gets more out of it because of that level of engagement. So that's what we aim for. A 0 lead only does directly what you ask or only expects you to respond to specific things like, hey, we need this thing refilled tomorrow. Bye. Do they give negative feedback to other customers or prospects? And that's a little bit worse than a 0, but that's what we'll put on the 0 category. That's a problem. So if somebody says, hey, I met such and such at a superintendent's conference and they said they used your platform and they just shrugged and said, we don't like it, but that's bad. You want to fix that. A 1 in the advocacy category agrees to talk to other schools, gives fair reviews when asked, and works well with others on the company side. So I'm actually not clear what I meant by that one, but just kind of generally it's a positive working relationship, but it's a working relationship very clearly. There are clear boundaries and things just don't go beyond where you expect them to be. And then a 2, your top scoring advocates are leads volunteer to advocate. So a CEO wants to write an op-ed about your product. You buy that sucker lunch. Actively involved with company community leadership. And that's really good. So somebody who reaches out to the superintendent, who comes to your conferences, who wants to be a speaker at your product conferences, that's really good too. That's huge to have that kind of customer advocate who actively reaches out to talk about what they use this for and why they like it. Again, also really good for the customer because it gives them more visibility and also really helps put weight to what they would like to see the product go to in the future. So those folks are the ones who most have product development, like the actual future of the product team's ear. They're the ones that really kind of are heard the most. Which isn't to say the others aren't, but that's a really good way to make sure that your opinions matter with the maximum impact. And then give glowing public reviews unprompted. So I had one customer who was in a like a group chat, like a professional group chat on Facebook, nothing I would ever see because it was a private group specifically for this industry. And this lead routinely reached out to me saying that they had been involved in conversations on this platform saying, this is some of the chatter we're hearing, here's some of the negative comments we're seeing, here's how I've replied to it, talking about my very positive experience. This is some stuff you should be aware of. That is so good. That is so good. We absolutely strive to have every single relationship get to that point. And I will always smile every time I think of that because that was so sweet, so productive, so helpful, like such a incredible nod to this. And I actually had those conversations fairly early in my time doing any of this customer success stuff. And I cannot describe to you the difference it made overall in everything. How the product worked, how I interacted with customers, how I interacted with the product and internal team. Everything got better because one person was this. So your fives, your two scores in your five category, these folks can really push things in a positive way, a lot beyond what anybody I think would assume based on just the things that they do. And that's it. So that's my metric. So let's go ahead and recap real quick. So 1 to 10 scale in 5 parts, every single category can be 0 to 2, with the minimum being 0. It should be a 0 to 10 scale, so I'll fix this. We'll work on that. But communication, authority, usage adoption, feedback, and advocacy. And just to note here, none of these are categories that necessarily come up in other things. This doesn't mention renewal. This doesn't mention upsells. This does not mention anything to do with purchasing, has a little bit to do with usage of the product. But all of these are fairly clearly defined metrics built around the actual customer success relationship. So these are a really good trainable basic, to my own horn, a really good kind of communicable, trainable, referenceable metric for how to actually consistently measure CSM sentiment. Back to our beginning. And this is a really important conversation. I wanted to take a moment to kind of stick up for CSM sentiment as a category, as something that was really important to these relationships, that is something companies should be tracking and be on top of, but in a way that fixes the bigger problems, that inconsistency, that difficulty of measuring, the lack of a clear metric. And hopefully this goes a long way to go ahead and address all of that. So that's it. Of course, I would love to hear from your team. I'd love to hear if you have any feedback on these individual categories, or if you use this and it has any kind of transformative effect. I'd love to hear that too. Please let me know. Yeah, till then, talk soon.